Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Week 12 version of the Commissioner's Corner MUSL podcast. I'm your host, James L. Seagraves, coming flying solo once again. Which will hopefully be the last podcast with this old computer, which presents this buffering problem, where you'll see me kind of talking, but my lips will be moving like an old kung fu film. Anyway, week one of the playoffs is done. A lot of disappointment out there, and I'll go over that here in a minute. Some fantastic performances, though, also to keep in mind. Well, let's just go over what happened last week first, okay? I'm going to be looking down here at this screen, so bear with me. Okay, so we're going to start from the top in order of the bracket. What went down? Fear Boner, which is Shane Chenavare, or whatever the hell your name is. Sorry, Shane. Don't know how to pronounce your last name, maybe. They were the number 17 seed. They crushed it out, 103.85 points. They had, and unfortunately, Dave Scher, the lovable Dave Scher, GM of the year, not really, he got the receiving end of that because he scored a respectable 84.69 points this week. But was not good enough to defeat Fear Boner, who will now move on to face. Here's your reward, Shane. You get to play the number one seed overall, which is a little misleading because the number one seed overall isn't really the best in the best shape. Okay, they're in pretty good shape. Chichki, you'll play them next week. We'll look at those matchups here in a little bit. In the battle of MegaCon referrals, Abel Frausto, the number 15 seed, was upset by the Collector Kings, Danny Lane, by a score of 71.55 to 51.9. See, Dave Scher, if you would have played either of those teams, you would have won. Collector Kings gets to, goes on to the next round, and we'll talk about that epic rematch here in just a minute. Ryan Frazier's season has come to an end, I'm afraid. Yes, if I had a soundboard I could link up right now, I'd play the "aww" sound. Still has a lot of money I need to collect, so don't be jumping town. 52 is the Mike, the number 19 seed, defeated by Sioux Girls 1 Cup. I don't know why. What is going on with this? I hear like echoing and stuff. Let me just move some stuff here. What's going on here? There we go. Maybe that's better. 52 is the Mike, not upset. The number 14 seed Sioux Girls 1 Cup defeated him by a score of 73.12 to 56.17. So Ryan Frazier's season is over. I'm going to try not talking so loud into the mic there. Sioux Girls 1 Cup will face Squadrels next week, but we'll do the matchups here in a little bit. Number 13, Brady's Balls, gets upset by the lovable Tom Schneider, getting Schneider, who was 6-5 and made it in on the points, ladies and gentlemen. And his point streak continues. 93.49 points, which is good for like third of the week. Defeating Brady's Balls, 93.49 to 64.98. Congratulations, getting Schneider. You will move on to the next. In the matchup of the low scores of the week, we have Roster Baiters, the 21 seed, beating the 12 seed. Tell me something good. By a score of 55.63 to 49.59. I was watching that game with interest, mind you. Tell me something good. Basically needed Demaryius Thomas to catch a touchdown, which he caught like one pass. What a shit bag. Roster Baiters moves on to the next round. Yes, it's true. 52 Shades of Clay got in on the wild card, and they were defeated by the wild card. So, yep, wild card is out. Stafford Johnson goes deep up into Shades of Clay. Oh, that sounds kinky. 62.97 over them, or for 62.97 to 55.11 the score. Stafford Johnson goes deep, moves on to the next round. Upset alert! Upset alert! Yes, that's right. Tecumseh Football Titans, who are in control of their own conference for the majority of the year, loses to a wild card drawing. The Dublin Drunks, Jeff Arbogast. He was 5-6, but that's why you never give up on the muscle, because you can get in on the wild card and you can upset one of the best teams in the league. 82.96 to 71.85. The Dublin Drunks will move on to face the immortal New Orleans Rock Chucks. More on that in just a minute. And then the last first round matchup. The final first round matchup to discuss today. Rob Bradley, a.k.a. Stats himself, one of the best co-hosts of all time, maybe a great co-host, but he was not a great playoff manager, as the Black Hole demolished by Yeti Express. That's Bob Ames. He can dunk. He was the only person that could dunk in high school, and he slam dunked the shit out of the Black Hole, scoring 104.02 points. The Black Hole, 65.89, which still would have been enough to beat most teams, but not the Yeti Express. The number 24 seed, the final team to get in on the wild card drawing, moves on to play. We'll see in a minute. So, a couple facts to go over here. First of all, you're going to tell me, and this is probably why some of these scores are so low. I was just looking at some facts. You're going to tell me that last week, week 12, the first week of the playoffs where you're only 5 wins away from a huge prize package, and you have the audacity to tell me not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4, but 5 teams. 5. You see this right here? 5. I can't see myself right now because where am I at? Where am I at? Oh, there I am. 5 teams. 5 put their season, their whole season, this whole year, they've tried to make it to this point. 5 God-blessing teams put their season in the hands of who? Brian Hoyer? What? I mean, Jesus, I know that performance-enhancing drugs are a big deal in the NFL, but I think we need to drug test some of these owners. 5 teams put Brian Hoyer as a quarterback in the playoffs. What is going on with this world? Brian Hoyer, a.k.a. Brian Croy, looks just like him. 5 teams. Yes, indeed, and he scored a staggering 10.95 points, which is probably why a lot of you guys lost this week, I would guess. I didn't look to see who started him. I probably should. I don't know how to even see who started him. Oh, here we go. Let's look. Okay, so that's a little misleading because 2 teams, thank God, 2 teams started him who weren't even in the playoffs, Magic Mike and Flatliners. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but you're doing something. But nevertheless, Fear Boner, who won, actually, I think, right? Yes. Abel Frausto's the Wolfpack and Collector Kings, they played each other. So 3 teams in the playoffs, sorry. But still, 3 teams put their faith in him, and 2 of them won, so I guess I don't have a valid point there. But even still, you talk about luck. What the hell? 5 teams. Jesus. 3 people started Matthew Stafford, and that was a great start this week. 3 people started Carson Palmer. 3 people started Blake Bortles. 1 person started Russell Wilson with his 27.6. And 3 people also started Kirk Cousins, which is a reasonable start. He didn't do great, but still. 1 person started Drew Brees, 3.56 points. Who the hell was that? I got victimized. That was 52 Shades of Clay, and they barely lost. If Drew Brees hadn't just blown a giant ball, they would have won. But yeah, tough luck for you. I'm sorry. So I'm not going to go over all the players, but I just saw that Brian Hoyer statistic, and it shocked me. Drew Brees, 3 points. That's really shocking too. So let's look ahead to see what's going on next week then, shall we? I don't know what's going on with this microphone. It's driving me nuts. So starting at the top. Started at the top, and now we're back at the top. Let me try this. Nope, that doesn't do it. I don't know how to use this thing. That's driving me insane. So anyway, we're going to go with Chichki, the number 1 overall seed, will be playing Fear Boner. Okay, now I have done some nerdy statistics, as you might expect, to see what teams have the best shot of winning, what teams have the worst shot of winning, okay? So what I did was I took all of the points, not just the starter points, which you can easily look up because that's way too easy. It doesn't really gauge who you've started. I took every single point that was scored by any player that was started by a team, whether they were starting that week or not, and added them up. Okay? So right now we have Chichki, who obviously the people who had a bye this week are going to have lower numbers because they didn't have to start people. Chichki, total points scored from all the players they've used this year, 8,258.11. Fear Boner will be going up against them. Had a fantastic week this week. They have 8,888 or 8,886.71 points. That's a difference of 628.6 points. On the scale, that is the fourth smallest margin. So even though Chichki had they were number one basically the entire year, the number one going to the playoffs, definitely not a shoe-in to win this week, in my opinion, because they've obviously, the discrepancy between points scored isn't that high, honestly, okay? On the other hand, and now this is definitely the matchup of the year right here, okay? Robert Griffin III, he has a little bit of a history with this Collector Kings character because in week 6, Robert Griffin III defeated Collector Kings 80.31 to 50.95. Okay, so this is an epic rematch. It's a conference rematch, but this goes way beyond that, folks. If you remember correctly, there was a fucking debacle over this game because this is the game that the Collector King submitted a lineup. I put the lineup in, but based on the fact that in the podcast, I did say that said way was not allowed. These points got disallowed, got randomized, and then ultimately Collector Kings lost. So, brutal way to lose that game. But vengeance may be upon them because in the playoffs, the Collector Kings have a chance to unwrite what has been written, to undo what has been done, and to stick it to Robert Griffin III once and for all. He gets a chance at payback. Now, the problem is that out of the regular teams that are here, okay, now I say regular for a reason. Robert Griffin III did not have a chance to just bail on a lineup like some of these teams have because they won their conference or whatever. Out of the regular teams that started legitimate lineups the entire time, weren't glitched or didn't coast in because they knew they could win, he has the lowest total number of points, which is actually a bad thing for Collector Kings. Altogether, his lineup has every player he started or every player that he has used this year went 8,014.42 points. 0.42 points. Collector Kings, on the other hand, 9,216.49 points. That is a discrepancy of 1,202.07 points. So odds are heavily in RGTT's favor that he will beat Collector Kings once again, and fair and square, as he would say. But I don't know, man. Collector Kings, they won't go away. They just won't go away. I personally, no offense to who is it, John Gillette, I believe Robert Griffin III is. I personally am hoping for Collector Kings to pull off this upset because I feel he got screwed in that deal, and it was kind of my fault. Not really. I shouldn't have ever allowed it, but nevertheless, I made a mistake. When I make a mistake, I own up to it. A Lannister always repays his debts, and a Seagraves always owns up to his mistakes, few and far between as they may be. So that's the game to watch, in my opinion. Collector Kings gets a chance at redemption versus Robert Griffin III. Hold on, I got to drink some of this mysterious iced tea that my wife made. I don't think iced tea is supposed to look like apple cider, but still. Yeah. All right. So in the next game, another hotly anticipated matchup. The Squadrels, who won their conference, obviously, 9-2, 831.99 points overall. They will be playing Tony Cromwell's team in Sioux Girls 1 Cup, who defeated 52 as the Michael Ryan Fraser team this week. This is huge. This is one half of perhaps the biggest matchup of all time if things happen. I'll talk about that here in a second. Squadrels, they have scored a total of 8,459.44 points by their collective lineups. Sioux Girls 1 Cup, 92-20-44. A difference of 761 points, which is not very high, but it's the fifth lowest margin of victory. So, and I'll go over these one more time at the end here. So that's going to be a good game to watch. The next matchup is the other half of the potential matchup of the century next week, if it happens. Brady O'Bush, the conference winner, versus getting Schneidered, Tom Schneider. Brady O'Bush is Ashley Cromwell, 8-3. The highest scoring team in the regular season, plus they won their conference, so they're sitting very well. Although they did not get the luxury of bailing in a lineup because they had to fight for that conference spot, but they got a bye last week, so they're in pretty good shape. There's a difference of 667.71 points between these two in terms of all the players they've started. That is good for the third smallest. So getting Schneidered, you're not in terrible shape. Moving on, the Broskis. Yes, indeed, a Harris brother. Both Harris brothers are in the playoffs, by the way. This is Josh Harris's team. They'll be taking on Andrew Brown, who barely squeaked ahead of Tell Me Something Good last week. The Broskis versus the Roster Baiters. The Broskis have a 590.83 point disadvantage, quote unquote, which means that they've scored a lot of points. And you don't want to have these numbers high, to be honest with you, in this point, because you want to have the lowest scores possible. It means you haven't used the best players, obviously. So the Broskis hoping to get in there and defeat the Roster Baiters, Andrew Brown's team. Then we have Mike Smith's team. Mike Stevens' team. Jesus, what the hell? Mike Smith, he works for the freaking tip-off or tip-up, whatever the hell that tip-off is what it's called. Mike Smith. What am I thinking? Oh, I see MES. Mike, Jesus, what is my problem? Anyway, Uncle Mike, as we call him, Mike Stevens, going up against Stafford's Johnson Goes Deep. And that is Brian David. Okay, he's the longtime owner. First time, no, he's never actually co-hosted, so who cares? There is a difference here of 477.07 points. So that is the most favorable matchup. If anyone's statistically, Stafford's Johnson Goes Deep has the best shot of upsetting a team because there's only a 477 point differential between all their players they've used. So, but I'm hoping that Uncle Mike wins because he could use a good victory. You know what I'm saying? He suffered like everyone else has through these Lions days. So, although they're doing all right now. And by the way, they play the Packers, who they beat a couple weeks ago, tomorrow night. So if you want to watch that game, I'm sure you will be. And then we get to the big two here. These are interesting. The New Orleans Rock Chucks, even though they weren't the number one seed, they are by far in the best shape out of the playoffs here, okay? Because they got the bye. That's all they really needed. They're playing a wild card team, the Dublin Drunks, who, Jeff, not exactly the world's luckiest guy in the world, but still, he did defeat Tecumseh last week. New Orleans was able to coast. He basically hasn't started a lineup in 3 weeks now because he had his conference wrapped up. So, needless to say, all of his starters combined, 7,000. 7,000. That's over almost 1,000 less than the next closest. Well, not true, but 7,340.62 points altogether. Dublin's 85.94.78. That's a difference of 1,254.16 points. Huge advantage for New Orleans there. So they haven't used a lot of players because they haven't put a lineup in since week 10, week 9 maybe? I don't know when they did. But cruise control so far for New Orleans. Can Jeff pull off the upset? That's what we're all hoping for. We don't know, though. Aaron King co-hosted a couple weeks ago. If he wins, we're going to bring him back for next week. I can tell you that much because he'll be playing against the winner of, well, it's the Big Z Show and Yeti Express. Yeti Express, Bob Ames, killed the Black Hole last week. Faces, well, it's the Big Z Show this week in the whatever round it is, week 13 matchup. Well, it's a Big Z Show. Has a unique situation that he has here. As you all may have heard, we are diligently, well, some of us, not so much this guy, a lot of the people here, including Aaron King, who just mentioned not too long ago, are working on a site that is not going to be broken like this one. This is the only site that can do this, but it does have occasional quirks. Some quirks being, well, it's the Big Z Show, for example, two times, didn't submit a lineup, but the website showed he submitted a lineup, so he didn't get randomized. And then ultimately, when push came to shove, he scored 0 points and no players were used. Of course, he lost both of those weeks, but somehow he still managed to win his conference. So because of that, he hasn't used hardly any players either, kind of like Aaron King, but Aaron King did it, the proper way, if you will. So Big Z scored 7,404 points. Yeti Express 8565.7. Now that is actually a really impressive number, though, being where he is. That is the lowest number of the teams that did not get a bye, I believe. It is. And that is, put it in perspective, Yeti Express 8,565 points is only like 100 points more than Brady O'Bush and the Squadrels. It's actually 200 points less than the Broskis and 100 points less than Red Wings. And all those players, all those teams got byes. So Yeti Express, you talk about a wild card that is deserving. That is definitely him. So congratulations to you on crushing it last week rather. and then make it in there to take on Clifford Zink. So that is the breakdown. We have Cheechki versus Fearboner, Robert Griffin III versus Collector Kings, Squadrels versus Sioux Girls 1 Cup, Brady O'Bush versus Getting Schneider, the Broskies versus Roster Baiters, Red Wings versus Stafford Johnson Goes Deep, New Orleans Rock Chucks versus the Dublin Drunks, and Well, It's the Big Z Show versus Yeti Express. According to the Vegas odds, Stafford Johnson has the highest chances of upsetting, Roster Baiters the second highest, Fearboner the third highest, Getting Schneider the fourth highest, Sioux Girls 1 Cup the fifth highest, Yeti Express the sixth highest, Collector Kings the seventh highest, and New Orleans has the best shot of winning here, according to Vegas or James. The Dublin Drunks has the worst shot of upsetting because New Orleans is in such great shape. So anyway, thanks for joining me here for another edition of the Commissioner's Corner. And I'm going to upload this. Then I got to head to work. Notice that my wife did clean up the mysterious pile of crap that was over there and stacked all the board games from the pantry. So I just noticed that. So anyway, you guys have a wonderful day and go Lions. And yeah, we'll see you soon.